I was staring at my daughter's ruined credit report when I made the call that would send my father to jail. My hands weren't shaking. My voice didn't crack. I simply dialed 911 and reported the crime that would tear my family apart forever. But here's the thing that nobody tells you about betrayal. Sometimes the people who destroy you are the ones who raised you, and sometimes justice feels a lot like revenge. My 7-year-old daughter Ellie had 3 credit cards in her name, $20,000 in debt, collection agencies calling a phone number she didn't even have. All of it opened by my parents, Howard and Linda Matthews, who at that exact moment were posting Instagram stories from a luxury resort in Miami, cocktails in hand, designer shopping bags at their feet, celebrating my niece's birthday with the golden child of the family, my sister Marissa, the same parents who texted me 2 weeks earlier. Sorry. Sweetie, money's really tight this year. We can't make it to Ellie's birthday. You understand, right? If you're watching this and you've ever felt like the family scapegoat, like you're invisible unless someone needs something from you, hit that like button. Subscribe, because this story gets darker before it gets better. And drop a comment telling me if you've ever had to choose between blood and boundaries, because I need to know I'm not the only one who had to burn it all down to finally breathe. Let me take you back to the beginning. Let me show you how I became the villain in my own family story, just by refusing to be their victim anymore. I grew up as the forgotten daughter, not abused in the traditional sense, just invisible. Marissa was the star, 3 years older, blonde, where I was brunette, charming, where I was awkward, successful, where I was just trying to survive. She married a lawyer. I married a mechanic who left me pregnant and alone when Ellie was 2. She lived in a 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like the Thai restaurant downstairs. My parents never said they loved Marissa more. They didn't have to. It was in every action, every choice, every holiday photo where somehow the camera angle cut me out. But I kept trying. God, I kept trying. Because that's what you do when you're starving for crumbs of affection. You convince yourself that if you just give more sacrifice, more, prove your worth, more, eventually they'll see you. For 10 years, I paid for their cell phone plan. Family plan, they called it, $240 a month. I paid their car insurance when Dad retired early, $350 a month. I sent money for groceries when Mum complained about inflation. $400 here, $600 there. I was making $42,000 a year as a medical billing specialist, and at least $15,000 of it went straight to my parents. Did Marissa contribute? Of course not. She had her own family to think about, her own bills. Her kids needed piano lessons and soccer camps. But me, I was single. I didn't need much. That was the narrative. The thing is, I convinced myself it was normal. Cultural, even. Taking care of your parents, honouring thy father and mother, all that biblical stuff they'd throw at me whenever I hesitated before handing over another cheque. Meanwhile, Marissa got the inheritance items, the family jewellery, the promises about the house. I got the privilege of keeping them afloat. Ellie's 7th birthday fell on a Tuesday in October. I took the day off work, lost a day's pay, and spent my grocery money on a small cake from Whole Foods. Nothing fancy, just chocolate with vanilla frosting and 7 little candles. I decorated our tiny living room with streamers from the dollar store. I wrapped the Barbie doll I'd bought on clearance 3 months earlier and hidden in my closet. I texted my parents the week before. Ellie's birthday is next Tuesday. I know it's a weekday, but maybe you could stop by after dinner. She really misses you guys. It's been 3 months since she's seen you. Mum's response came 2 days later. Oh, honey, Dad's back has been acting up. And you know, gas prices are crazy right now. It's just too much for us. We'll make it up to her at Christmas, promise. Love you. I read that text 5 times, each time feeling that familiar hollow ache in my chest. The same ache I'd been feeling since childhood, the one that whispered, "You're not worth the gas money. You're not worth the effort. You're just not worth it." But I plastered on a smile for Ellie. We had our little party, just the two of us. She blew out her candles and wished for grandparents who remembered she existed. She didn't say that out loud, but I saw it in her eyes when she asked, "Did Grandma and Grandpa forget about me?" That night, after Ellie went to bed clutching her new Barbie, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. I should have known better. I should have just put my phone down and gone to sleep. But there it was, posted 2 hours earlier, Mum's live story from the Fontainebleau Miami Beach Resort. The video was 45 seconds long. I watched it 17 times. Mum, in a flowing white linen dress, oversized sunglasses, a mimosa in her hand. Dad, in a Tommy Bahama shirt, grinning at the camera. Behind them, the infinity pool sparkled. The caption read, "Living our best life with our favourite grandkids, blessed beyond measure." The next story showed them at a boutique. Mum holding up a Coach purse, laughing. Another showed them at dinner, a table full of my sister's family, my 2 nieces in matching dresses, everyone toasting with champagne. The final story was the one that broke something inside me. All of them singing happy birthday to my 9-year-old niece Sophia, a massive cake with sparklers presents piled high. They weren't broke, they weren't too tired, they weren't dealing with back pain or gas prices. They simply chose Marissa's family over mine. Again, I took screenshots of everything, every post, every story, every smiling face. I don't know why. Some instinct told me I'd need evidence someday. Evidence of what I couldn't have told you then. I just knew something had shifted inside me, something that couldn't shift back. The weeks that followed were a blur. I went through the motions, work, parenting, existing. I stopped calling my parents. They didn't notice. Thanksgiving came and went. They went to Marissa's. I wasn't invited. I made a turkey breast for 2 and told Ellie we were having our own adventure. Then December arrived, and with it, a piece of mail that would change everything. It was addressed to Ellie Matthews, my 7-year-old daughter who had never received mail in her life except birthday cards from my ex-husband's mother. The return address was from Capital One. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. Inside was a credit card statement, past due amount $3,472. Account opened March 2023, current balance $8,206. Charges included Macy's, Nordstrom, Best Buy, Viking River Cruises, Delta Airlines. My daughter was 7 years old. She couldn't even spell Capital One. I stood in my kitchen, hands trembling now, the paper crinkling under my grip. There had to be a mistake, some clerical error, someone with a similar name. But there was Ellie's social security number, the one I'd memorised when she was born, the one I'd guarded like sacred text. I called Capital One. 45 minutes on hold. Then a customer service representative with a thick accent confirmed what I already knew, but couldn't accept. 3 credit cards had been opened using Ellie's social security number and date of birth. Capital One, Chase and American Express. Total debt, $19,843. I asked who opened them. She couldn't tell me that privacy laws, but she could tell me the billing address on file, my parents' address. The same address where I'd grown up, where my childhood photos still hung on the wall, where I was supposed to be safe. After I hung up, I sat on my kitchen floor and didn't cry. I couldn't. The betrayal was too big for tears. It was a black hole that swallowed everything else. How long had they been doing this? Who else knew? Did Marissa know? I pulled Ellie's credit report that night. In America, you're entitled to 1 free credit report per year from each of the 3 major bureaus. I'd never thought to check my 7-year-old's credit, because why would I? Children don't have credit. Except mine did. The report read like a crime novel. The first account was opened when Ellie was 4 years old. 4. My parents had been stealing her identity for 3 years. 3 years of charges for cruises, electronics, clothing, restaurants. All the while crying poverty to me, hitting me up for grocery money, letting me pay their bills. I traced the charges backward through bank statements I'd saved through old texts and emails. Every time they'd asked me for money coincided with a new charge on Ellie's stolen credit cards. When I'd sent them $800 for a surprise car repair in June, They'd charged $1,500 at Best Buy that same week. When I'd covered their electric bill in August, they'd booked flights to Vegas. But here's what made it truly evil. They'd been careful. They made minimum payments most months, keeping the accounts just current enough to avoid collections. They were building debt slowly, methodically, like a cancer you don't notice until it's terminal. By the time Ellie turned 18 and applied for her first real credit card, her credit would have been destroyed. She'd have spent years fighting to clear her name, prove she was a victim of identity theft, rebuild from ground zero. They were stealing her future. My daughter's future. And they were doing it while posting Instagram stories about being blessed. I spent that entire night researching. Identity theft by family members is more common than people think. Parents, siblings, even grandparents stealing from children because kids don't check their credit, don't notice the warning signs. In most states, it's a federal crime. In Florida, where my parents lived, theft of identity of a minor carried up to 5 years in prison per count. I had 3 counts. That was 15 years. The old me would have called them first, would have given them a chance to explain, to apologize, to fix it. The old me would have absorbed their excuses, their justifications, their promises to pay it back. The old me would have protected them from consequences, because family is family, and you don't send your parents to jail. But the old me died on my kitchen floor that night, surrounded by credit reports and bank statements and screenshots of luxury vacations I'd inadvertently funded. The woman who stood up at 3 a.m. was someone new, someone who understood that love without respect is manipulation, that blood doesn't excuse theft, that protecting your child means destroying whoever threatens them, even if they share your DNA. I didn't call my parents. Instead, I opened my laptop and got to work. First, I filed identity theft reports with all 3 credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. I froze Ellie's credit so no new accounts could be opened. I disputed every fraudulent charge, every account, every late payment. I provided documentation, proving Ellie's age, proving she couldn't have consented, proving this was theft. Then I went after the financial ties. The cell phone plan I'd been paying for a decade cancelled. The family plan disconnected at 9 p.m. that night. Their phones went dark while they were probably at some restaurant mid-conversation, suddenly cut off. The car insurance I'd been covering cancelled effective midnight. The supplemental health insurance I'd added them to through my employer terminated. But the car was the masterpiece. See, 3 years earlier, Dad had wanted to upgrade from his 2008 Corolla to something nicer. A Lexus ES350, certified pre-owned, beautiful silver exterior. But his credit was garbage, even then too many missed payments, too much debt. So they'd asked if I'd co-sign. No, not co-sign. They'd asked if they could lease it in my name and they'd make the payments. I was hesitant. Co-signing was one thing, but putting a car entirely in my name while someone else drove it, that felt risky. But Mum had cried. Dad had talked about his dignity, about being able to drive something nice in his retirement. Marissa had called me selfish. So, I'd done it. They'd made exactly 4 payments. Then I started getting the bills. $398 a month. I'd been paying it for 2.5 years. $35,000 I'd paid for a car I never drove, never even sat in. At 11 p.m, I called the leasing company. Reported the vehicle as being operated by an unauthorized driver. Gave them the address where it was parked at Marissa's house where they were staying for the holidays. Explained I wanted to exercise my right to recover my property. The representative was sympathetic. This happened more often than people thought, she said. Family disputes, divorces, separations. They'd send a recovery team first thing in the morning. I slept that night. Really slept for the first time in weeks. Not because I was at peace, because I'd finally stopped carrying their weight. The next morning started early. I was up at 6 making Ellie's breakfast, packing her lunch for school, trying to maintain normalcy while my phone started exploding with notifications. Blocked numbers. I'd blocked my parents' phones the night before, but they were calling from other numbers. Marissa's number. My Aunt Valerie's number. Numbers I didn't recognise. At 8:30, I got a video message from a number I didn't have saved. I almost deleted it. Then, something made me open it. Shaky footage of a tow truck hooking up a silver Lexus. My father in his bathrobe running out of Marissa's house yelling at the driver. My mother behind him, hair in curlers screaming. The driver, unbothered professional, loading the car onto the flatbed. Neighbours watching from their driveways. Marissa in the doorway, arms crossed, face red. The video ended with Dad kicking a recycling bin across the lawn. I watched it twice, then I blocked that number too. The calls continued all morning. By noon, I'd blocked 16 different numbers. I was at work trying to focus on insurance claims and billing codes when my phone rang from the front desk. "There's a Valerie Pritchard, here to see you." My aunt, Valerie, Mum's older sister. The matriarch of the family, the one who'd always made it clear I was a disappointment, who'd told me at my wedding that I was settling, who'd pulled me aside at Dad's retirement party to inform me that the family hoped I'd step up now that Dad wasn't working. I went downstairs. She was in the lobby. Designer coat leather gloves, face tight with anger. The receptionist looked uncomfortable. Valerie clearly didn't understand you couldn't just show up at someone's workplace and demand an audience. "We need to talk," Valerie said. "Not hello, not how are you, just a demand." "I'm at work," I said. "This can't wait. What you're doing to your parents is unconscionable." Other people in the lobby were watching now. A delivery guy. A patient checking in. The receptionist's hand hovering near the phone. I'm not doing anything to them," I said quietly. "I'm protecting my daughter from identity theft." "They borrowed some money. That's not theft. That's family helping family. They stole my daughter's social security number and destroyed her credit. That's a federal crime." Valerie stepped closer, voice dropping to a hiss. "You've always been dramatic, always making everything about you. Your parents need help and you're too selfish to provide it." Something in me snapped, not into anger, into clarity. My daughter is 7 years old. She can't consent to $20,000 in debt. That's not borrowing, that's theft. And you can leave now, or I'll call security. "You're going to regret this," Valerie said. "Family is all you have. When you're old and alone, don't come crying to us." "I'll take my chances," I said and walked back to the elevator. My hand shook the entire ride up. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from the realization that I'd just set a boundary with Valerie Pritchard and survived. That evening, after I picked Ellie up from school, after we did homework and ate dinner and watched one episode of Bluey, after she was safely asleep with her Barbie tucked under her arm, I poured myself a glass of wine and checked my email. 47 unread messages, most from addresses I didn't recognize, but the subject lines gave them away. "This is your mother. Call me immediately. How dare you? You'll regret this." I didn't open any of them. I created a filter. Anything from domains associated with my family went straight to a folder I'd never check. Then I found the emails I was actually looking for. The credit bureaus had confirmed my identity theft reports. All 3 fraudulent accounts were flagged. The police report I'd filed online that afternoon had been assigned a case number. The detective, handling it, a woman named Sarah Chen, had sent me a follow-up questionnaire. I filled it out methodically. Names of perpetrators, their address, detailed timeline, list of fraudulent charges, supporting documentation. I attached everything: credit reports, bank statements, screenshots of my parents' social media showing expensive vacations and purchases, screenshots of text messages where they'd claimed to be broke while asking me for money. I sent it at 9:42 p.m. The email confirmation felt like a door closing. A door I'd been holding open my entire life, waiting for my parents to walk through and actually see me. That door was closed now, locked, bolted, sealed. The next morning was Saturday. I'd taken Ellie to the park, trying to give us both some normalcy, when my phone rang from an unknown local number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Detective Chen. She'd reviewed my report overnight. She had some follow-up questions. Could I come to the station? We went that afternoon, Ellie staying with my neighbour, Mrs. Rodriguez, who didn't ask questions when I said I had an important errand. The police station was exactly like on TV: fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, the smell of burnt coffee and stress. Detective Chen was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanour. She led me to a small interview room and laid out my documentation on the table. "This is one of the clearest cases of familial identity theft I've seen," she said. "Your documentation is excellent. The social media evidence is particularly damning because it establishes motive and means. They were living beyond their means using your daughter's credit." "What happens now?" I asked. "I'll present this to the district attorney. Given the amount involved and the victim's age, they'll likely pursue charges. Identity theft of a minor fraud, possibly elder abuse since they used their position as grandparents to access the child's information." "Elder abuse," I said, "but they're the elders." "Financial exploitation works both ways," she said. "They exploited their relationship with your minor child. In Florida, that's prosecutable." She paused, studying me. "I need to ask you something. Are you prepared for what comes next? These are your parents. If charges are filed, there's a strong possibility of jail time. Family members often change their minds when it becomes real." I thought about Ellie blowing out her candles alone, about the credit card statements, about 20 years of feeling invisible, about the Instagram posts from Miami. "I'm not changing my mind," I said. She nodded slowly. "Okay, one more thing. They're going to know it was you who filed the report. They may try to contact you, intimidate you, convince you to drop it. If they threaten you in any way, document it and call me immediately. Get a restraining order if necessary." I laughed, a bitter sound. "They've been here 4 times already. My aunt showed up at my work." Her expression hardened. "That needs to stop. Would you like to file for a protective order?" "Not yet," I said. "I want to see if they'll respect boundaries first." I was naive. I know that now. Sunday morning, I was doing laundry when someone started pounding on my door. Not knocking. Pounding. The kind of aggressive banging that makes your heart race and your hands freeze. I looked through the peephole. My father, face red veins bulging in his neck. Behind him, my mother crying, and Valerie, arms crossed, face smug. I didn't open the door. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording audio. Then, I called through the door. "You need to leave. I don't want to talk to you." "Open this goddamn door, Scarlett!" Dad roared. "You think you can destroy your family and hide—" "I'm not hiding. I'm protecting my daughter from criminals." "Criminals?" Mum wailed. "We're your parents. We changed your diapers. We raised you. You stole from a child. That makes you criminals." The pounding intensified. Then I heard glass shatter. They'd thrown something through my living room window. Rocks from the landscaping I'd later discover. 2 of them, leaving jagged holes in the glass. Ellie screamed from her bedroom. I ran to her, scooped her up, locked us in the bathroom, called 911 with shaking hands while my father continued to pound on the door, shouting obscenities, and my mother cried, and my Aunt Valerie's voice cut through it all. "This is what happens when you betray your family." The 911 operator kept me on the line, asked if I was safe if they'd gotten inside if anyone was injured, told me police were en route, told me to stay locked in the bathroom. I could hear everything, the pounding, the shouting, a neighbour yelling that they'd called the cops too. Then, sirens. The pounding stopped. New voices, authoritative official. "Step away from the door. Put your hands where I can see them." The operator told me it was safe to come out. I carried Ellie, her face buried in my neck, her small body shaking. We emerged to find 2 police cruisers, lights flashing, and my father in handcuffs. Not restraints. Actual handcuffs. Hands behind his back being read his rights. One officer was talking to my mother and Valerie. Another approached me, a woman with grey streaks in her dark hair and a weathered face that suggested she'd seen everything. "I'm Officer Martinez. Are you hurt?" I shook my head. Ellie whimpered. "Your window's broken. We've got photos. Your neighbour caught some of the incident on her Ring doorbell. Do you want to press charges for property damage and trespassing?" I looked at my father, slumped in the back of the patrol car. At my mother, makeup streaked down her face. At Valerie, who was arguing with the other officer, gesturing wildly. Old me would have said no. Would have absorbed this too. Would have apologised for making them so upset. New me said yes, and I need to speak to Detective Sarah Chen. She's handling an identity theft case involving these same people. Officer Martinez's expression shifted professional sympathy, giving way to grim understanding. I'll make the call. They arrested my father for criminal mischief and trespassing. They issued a warning to my mother and Valerie to stay away or face arrest themselves. They helped me board up the window with plywood until I could get it replaced. One officer stayed to take my full statement, while another photographed the damage, collected the rocks as evidence, took measurements. My neighbour, Mrs. Rodriguez, came over with Ellie. Mi amor, she said to me, pulling me into a hug. You don't deserve this. None of this. Later, after everyone had left after I'd gotten Ellie, calm enough to sleep in my bed with me after I'd checked every lock 3 times, and pushed a chair under the doorknob, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. This was my family. These were the people who'd raised me, celebrated my birthdays, taught me to ride a bike. And they'd just tried to break into my home, had shattered my windows, had terrified my child, because I dared to say no, because I dared to protect my daughter, because I dared to draw a line in the sand and refuse to be erased anymore. Monday morning, I called a lawyer, paid $200 I didn't have for a consultation. She listened to everything, took notes, nodded in all the right places. You need a restraining order, she said. Today, I'll file the petition this afternoon. Given the property damage and the pattern of harassment, you'll get an emergency temporary order immediately. The hearing for a permanent order will be in 2 weeks. Well, what about the identity theft case? That's separate criminal charges, the state handles it. But document everything. Every text, every call, every attempt at contact. If they violate the restraining order, that's immediate jail time. Will this actually stop them? She gave me a sad smile. Some people respect court orders. Some people need to learn the hard way. But either way, you'll have legal protection and they'll have consequences. The restraining order was issued at 4 p.m. It covered me and Ellie. My parents were prohibited from coming within 500 feet of our home, my workplace, Ellie's school. No contact, direct or indirect. No phone calls, texts, emails, social media messages, or third-party communication. I had copies served on them immediately. Professional process servers who knocked on their door and handed them official paperwork. The look on their faces, the servers later told me, was shock. Genuine shock. Like they couldn't believe I'd actually done it. That night, my phone was silent for the first time in days. No calls, no texts, no emails. The absence of chaos felt strange, unsettling. I kept checking my phone expecting something, but nothing came. Until Tuesday morning when Marissa called from a number I hadn't blocked yet. Her number was in my phone as Big Sis with a heart emoji. I stared at it, debating, then answered. How could you? She said. No hello, no preamble. How could you do this to Mom and Dad? They stole from Ellie, I said. They borrowed some money. There's a difference. She's 7 years old. She can't consent to loans. That's theft, Marissa. Federal theft. You're destroying this family over money? Do you know how that makes you look? I'm protecting my daughter from criminals. They're not criminals. They're our parents. They made a mistake. A 3-year mistake. A $20,000 mistake. Come on. Silence. Then, you need to drop the charges. All of them. The identity theft, the property damage, all of it. We're a family. We handle things privately. We stopped being a family when they chose to steal from my child. You were always jealous, Marissa said, her voice turning cold. Always resentful that Mum and Dad loved me more. This is just revenge. Something inside me went very quiet, very still. You knew, I said. You knew they were stealing from Ellie. I didn't know anything. You knew. That's why you're calling. Not to check on me, not to ask if we're okay. To protect them. To protect yourself. Because you benefited too. That's ridiculous. The cruise to Alaska last summer. Who paid for that? The new furniture in your living room. Your daughter's private school tuition. That's none of your business. Yeah, that's It is when it's stolen from my daughter. How much did they give you, Marissa? How much of Ellie's future did you spend? She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, a strange numbness spreading through my chest. My sister. My big sister who'd braided my hair and taught me to apply eyeliner and been my maid of honor. She'd known. Maybe not the details, but she'd known our parents were getting money somewhere living beyond their means, and she'd taken advantage of it. I blocked her number, added her to the list of people I was protecting my daughter from. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings. The DA decided to pursue charges, 3 counts of identity theft, 1 count of fraud, 1 count of criminal mischief. My father was released on bail, but had to wear an ankle monitor. Both parents were ordered to have no contact with me or Ellie. The family turned on me completely. Not just my parents, but everyone. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The narrative became ungrateful daughter sends parents to prison over money. I was the villain, the traitor, the one who broke the family. My phone was silent, except for blocked numbers showing up in my logs. 20, 30, 40 blocked calls a day. My social media became a wasteland of blocked accounts. Even people I'd gone to high school with, people I hadn't spoken to in years, felt entitled to message me their opinions on what a terrible person I was. I didn't defend myself publicly, didn't post my side of the story, didn't share the credit reports or the screenshots or the police reports. I had nothing to prove to people who'd already made up their minds. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I got my window replaced. I installed a security system, cameras covering every entrance. I started therapy, finally, something I should have done years ago. I took Ellie to a child psychologist who specialised in family trauma, and slowly, painfully, we started to heal. The court date was set for February. I'd have to testify, face my parents across a courtroom, tell a judge and jury what they'd done. The lawyer the DA assigned to work with me, a prosecutor named James Wright, prepped me for what to expect. They will try to make you look vindictive, he said. Their defence will be that this is a family dispute blown out of proportion, that you're weaponising the legal system because of personal grievances. But the evidence, I said, the credit reports the charges. Evidence is good, but juries are human. They hear daughter sent parents to prison, and they have emotional reactions. We need to make sure they understand this isn't about family dynamics. It's about a crime committed against a child. Will I have to talk about everything? The money I gave them, the way they treated me? Probably. The defence will paint you as estranged, difficult. We need to show context. Show that you tried to maintain a relationship, that you were financially supporting them even while they were stealing from your daughter. I spent the next few weeks preparing, writing timelines, organising documents, practising my testimony. Some nights I couldn't sleep playing scenarios in my head. Other nights I slept soundly, dreamless, empty. Christmas came and went. Ellie and I made our own traditions. We baked cookies, watched movies, opened presents in our pyjamas. My neighbour, Mrs. Rodriguez, invited us for dinner. It was quieter than previous years, smaller, but it felt clean, uncomplicated. On New Year's Eve, as Ellie slept and I watched the ball drop on TV, my phone buzzed with an email. From the prosecutor's office. Subject line, case update. I opened it with shaking hands. The email was brief. My parents had accepted a plea deal. 3 years, probation, mandatory restitution for the full amount stolen, plus interest, community service, and permanent restraining order. No jail time, but felony convictions on their records. They'd admitted guilt. It was over. Not the way I'd imagined, not with some dramatic courtroom showdown, but over nonetheless. I should have felt relief. Maybe triumph. Instead, I felt empty, hollow, like I'd been holding my breath for so long I'd forgotten what normal breathing felt like. Later, I'd learned what the plea deal really meant. They'd agreed to it because the evidence was overwhelming, and their lawyer advised them they'd lose at trial, because a felony conviction meant they couldn't vote, couldn't own firearms, couldn't pass background checks for certain jobs, because 3 years probation was better than 5 years in federal prison. But mostly I think they took the plea because fighting meant admitting what they'd done. Pleading guilty let them maintain the fiction, at least to themselves, that they'd been victims of a misunderstanding, that their daughter had overreacted, that they were the wronged party. I didn't care what fiction they told themselves. I had my daughter's clean credit report. I had my boundaries. I had my peace. The restitution came slowly. $75 a month garnished from Dad's Social Security. It would take years to pay off, maybe decades. But every month a small deposit appeared in the account the court had set up. Every month, proof that actions have consequences even for parents. Ellie's 8th birthday was different. Chuck E. Cheese, her whole class friends everywhere. She didn't ask about grandparents, didn't seem to miss them. Sometimes I wonder if I'm too harsh, too unforgiving. Then, I remember that credit report, those decades of debt that would have crushed her future. I remember the Instagram posts from Miami, the lies about being broke, the window shattering while my child screamed. And I remember that love isn't just a feeling, it's action. It's choosing your child's future over your parents' comfort. It's becoming the villain in their story so you can be the hero in hers. A few months ago, a letter arrived, my mother's handwriting. Inside a generic Hallmark card, "We miss you and Ellie. We're sorry for everything. Can we talk? No acknowledgement of what everything meant. No real apology. Just vague regret and a request for access. The same pattern that had defined our relationship forever. Minimize, dismiss, demand forgiveness. I threw it away without responding. Because some people will never understand what they did wrong. They'll never give you the closure you crave or the apology you deserve. And that's okay. You don't need their acknowledgement to heal. You don't need their permission to move forward. You just need to protect your peace and the people who matter most. Today, Ellie's 9. We're planning Disney World this summer, saving up building a life that's smaller than I once imagined, but infinitely more peaceful. She's in therapy, learning that family isn't always safe, that it's okay to be angry, that adults sometimes fail kids. She asked recently if she'd ever see her grandparents again. I told her the truth, maybe someday when you're older you can decide. But right now, my job is to keep you safe. She nodded, thought about it, then asked if we could make brownies. Just like that, the moment passed. Kids are resilient in ways adults forget. They accept what is and move forward. I'm learning to do the same. Blood doesn't make you family. Love does. Respect does. Showing up does. When people steal from your child, shatter your windows, and blame you for having boundaries, you don't owe them forgiveness. You owe yourself peace. You owe your children safety. Everything else is negotiable. Even family. Especially family. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been called the villain for setting boundaries? Have you had to choose between family loyalty and protecting someone you love? Drop a comment and let's talk about it. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because too many of us carry guilt for crimes we didn't commit. Too many of us apologize for boundaries we had every right to set. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not ungrateful. You're surviving, and that's more than enough.